Here I'll show you 6 expert charting techniques in Excel. And throughout the tutorial, we're going to build a kind of master stock chart. It's going to allow us to do all sorts of cool stuff. So right here, let's say that we want to look for the stock Google. Let's show opening prices for the year 2016. Update the chart. And bam! How cool is that? So I'm going to show you how to take this from the raw data, something that kind of looks like this, a little bit different than that, but the raw data from Yahoo's website or any finance website, put it into Excel, change it, do all sorts of cool stuff with it over here on the data tab, and then make an awesome dynamic chart like this. As well, in this tutorial, at the very end, I'll give you a kind of homework assignment that you can do by next week, and you can submit it to our forum at TeachExcel.com, as well as asking for help throughout the process, so you can use the skills you learn here to build an even cooler spreadsheet. Before we start, check the video description and click the link to TeachExcel so you can download the files for the tutorial and follow along. And make sure to subscribe and accept notifications so you can see all the new tutorials. Okay, first things first, let's get some data. Go to finance.yahoo.com. These guys have great data for the stocks. Let's go for Google. Type in the ticker symbol for that, GOOG. Close this guy, go down here. Here we have all the data for the stock. Let's go to historical data. Go down here. Let's choose a time period. Let's say I want it to go from 2016, 1/1, and let's do it up to today. Do historical prices. You have lots of different options here. Historical prices is a good one. And let's keep the frequency at daily. At the end, I will ask you to get weekly and monthly data and do something kind of cool with that. But for now, let's stick with daily. Hit apply and should refresh and then hit download data. All right, once you have the data downloaded, find it on your computer. If it's a pain to do that, hit the little arrow right here in Google Chrome and go to show in folder. Now I've already downloaded all the files for Google and I moved them to a new folder and renamed them daily, monthly, weekly, and the dates. That's a good way to do that. Now what we want to do is let's first open, we're just going to work with daily, so let's double click that. We get a nice big list of all this data. So what I'm going to do, select it all, hit Control C to copy it. Let's go to our other workbook, our nice empty thing right here. Let's call this one data. This is where all of our raw data is going to go. Let's copy that in. Now we can start. Now this actually brings us to the first tip, which is, notice here we have a date column with lots and lots of dates. And you may know that you can do all sorts of things with dates in Excel. So we could use our date functions to find first day of the month for each month, or the last day of the month, to get average values for months, to do all sorts of things, or even years, yearly data. We can do all of that in Excel, but you don't want to do anything in Excel that you don't have to do. So going back here, get the weekly data, get the monthly data. Wherever you get your data from, put it in a format that's going to make it easier to work with in Excel. Don't give yourself any more work than you have to. Now that we're in Excel with all of our raw data, let's do something with it. Remember, this data is not going to be visible. We don't care what's on this tab right here. We're going to be looking at another one. Let's just go ahead and make it, just call it chart. We're going to be looking at the chart tab over here. So for the data tab, let's make our life as easy as possible. Okay? We don't need to do any complex stuff here. Let's just keep it real simple. First things first, actually a good little tip, between this data over here on the left and the new data we're going to make on the right, do have an empty column. It's going to make things much easier later on. The first thing that I want to do, I want to add some data to this. So the ticker symbol. The ticker symbol here was GOOG. So for now we can delete the column just to make data entry slightly easier. Okay, so now let's put it back in. All right, so we have the ticker symbol. Now let's get the month, the year, and the date, and I'm going to call this date real. You'll see why a little bit later. So for the month, we want to get the month out of here, equals month, select the date, and before we copy it down, let's go ahead and make sure Excel realizes this is a date. Just select the cell, open up the Home tab, and we see it is a date. All right, so it's the date format. And actually, before I go one more step, let's go ahead and filter this guy. Put a little filter tab up here so we can work with them in a moment. And I just want to be safe. Let's sort oldest to newest. It should already be in that format, but let's just be safe. Now for the month, copy the month down. And remember, we're going to copy paste values. If you've been watching the tutorials, you know that. Control C, Alt E, S, V, enter. Now we have no more formulas, just hard-coded values. You can see all the way to the end. Perfect. Year, same setup, equals year. Select the date, copy down, Control C, Alt E, S, V, enter, escape. Date for the real one, we're going to copy this, so Control Shift down, copy. Let's go over here, paste it all in, select the cell, just make sure Excel realizes it's a date. Yep. Now let's go ahead and kill this date. I want to make this date text, and the reason is because if you plot this on a chart and it is a date and there are large gaps, it's going to look ridiculous. It's going to have all your bars on one side of the chart and then all of them on the other side and have this big empty space in the middle. So what we want to do is we want to convert this guy to the values that we see here, but we can't use copy-paste values for that. We need to use a function. So let's go over here and build our function. It's really quite simple. Let me zoom in a bit here. There we go. Equals text, open parentheses. Now we select the cell with the date, comma, double quote. Let's go over here so you can see it better. Now we type the format that we want. We want day, month, year. You might want to change that format, that date format for you based on where you are. So we hit enter and we have this. Now we can copy this down. Let's zoom out a bit. Okay, everything looks good. So once again, copy it down, Control C, Alt E, S, V, enter. Now everything is hard-coded text. So let's go ahead and copy this guy, or actually cut this. This was a temporary column, we don't need it. We're going to cut it, go over here, and paste it in. Select a cell, go to the Home tab. We see it's now general. So all of this is simple text, no longer in Excel's date format. But we have the real date still over here, so we can perform calculations on it in Excel. So now we have essentially created 3 helper columns, as well as an additional data column over here, so we can put which stock we have right down here. Now, depending on the data that you import, you may need no helper columns or extra data columns, or you may need a lot more. It depends what you want to do, how you want to transform your data, how you want to display it. You just need to think about that. And remember, it's much easier and much better to create these helper columns over here rather than have really any formulas or functions to get this from a cell. Because all this data, it doesn't matter what it looks like. As long as it's organized like a data table, everything's okay. Now there's one thing I want to take off because it does mess up the scale of the chart. I do not want volume. You'll notice that the number for volume is much higher than all the others. So let's go ahead and I'm actually just going to delete this. You could delete the entire column. It doesn't really matter. Now for the next tip, the data that you want to plot on the chart, turn it into an actual data table. It'll make life so much easier because when you go down here, actually let me just show you. I'll show you. It's going to automatically update the data for the chart. So go in here, hit Insert, Table. For the Create Table, make sure it selects the correct data, doesn't select anything too big, too small. In this case, I deleted one column, so let's go ahead and make sure it's does not include that. So column A1 to F505, table has headers. It's going to change a filtered range, so I have to go ahead and take that off. Just the stupid sort right here. So let's go to data, unclick filter, then insert table. Okay, everything's good. And we have our table. So go down to the bottom. This is our table. We can use it in the chart. It's really great. Let's add another data point. And the second that I hit enter, it has another row that automatically highlights for us. It's perfect. It's awesome. I've shown you this in other tutorials, and the beauty of it is that you don't have to use any sort of dynamic or auto-updating formulas. Our chart is automatically going to update with any new data that we have. So when we get new stock data, just copy paste it below. Make sure the chart updated. You're all good. Now, if you don't like the table format, it's really annoying. Just click in the table, go to Design, go to Table Styles, and let's remove it. Just look like normal data. Now, before I continue, I want to emphasize or re-emphasize how important it is that there's a space between these two sets of data. Have all of your metadata, have all of the additional data that you added, all this stuff over here, separate from this guy over here. If you added this as a data table, and you see the little drop-down arrows appear where we can do filter and sort, if you saw those also add for this guy over here, that's a bad thing. You need them to be separate for what we are going to do later. This is considered essentially one filter group over here and this one filter group over here. And it will affect a lot towards the end of the tutorial when we start to automate things. Alright, so now let's move on. We've got our data organized how we want. We got the data table, nice and neat. Let's create our interface. Now there's a lot of cool things that you can do here, but the main thing that you want to do is make it easy for the user. Because as you may have noticed, and if you know much about filtering, when we go back here, we're going to create the chart from this data. You can filter and do all sorts of cool stuff on your own. You can filter it here, you can filter for the stock ticker here, and you just, scroll down and choose what you want. But this isn't user-friendly, and that's the problem. Charts are supposed to make things pretty and user-friendly. And this is basically tip 4. It's going to include lots of little tips, but just to make everything look nice and user-friendly. And there's going to be lots of little tips involved in this. So stock chart, make it a little bigger, add some bold. Now let's go ahead and make our table. One little tip is when you're making a table, have some surrounding columns and rows that are small, like this, that you're not going to use for data. So what we can do, like this, then I'm going to create one more, like this. We could do it with this one as well. Just little formatting tips. What that's going to do is it's going to allow you to make borders around your data. So now we enter stock, show, date. Let's just make these guys with a simple bold. Now we want to create a little spacer column right here. So we use the spacer columns to make everything easier. I'm going to have some data here, so let's do a space. I believe this should be start, end, month, year. Now this might go a little slow here because I'm going to go through the formatting for you. So you can skip through this section if you want. Okay, bold. Now let's go ahead and make our border columns over here. Select 2, make you guys small. And we're going to have something there, so we'll make these 2 guys small. Now, what we can do, select it like this, go up here, thick outside borders, go to fill, let's do something like this. Then we can select the cells where we want user input. Fill those white. Give them a little tiny border. And now we have this nice and easy. But I forgot, I want to have a space right here. insert. Let's make this smaller. Okay, and what we can do is just copy the formatting here. Select this, Alt-E-S-T, enter. Perfect. So what I did is I just copied the formatting from one cell here to these cells here to make it easier. And we probably want a button. I totally forgot about the button as well. So let's go ahead and insert some more space. Copy the formatting once again. Paste it once again. Insert, illustrations, shapes, rounded rectangle. Now we can type update chart, hit escape, home tab, bold, center, bold did not seem to work, select it again, bold, there we go. Now we have what is starting to look like a nice little interface. So let's go ahead and add our chart. Easy way to do this across the worksheets, just go over to your data chart, your data tab, then select anywhere inside of our table that we created. Insert, where are you? Chart. I'll go with a very simple chart like this. Now when the chart's still selected, just hit Control X, go to the chart tab, Control V, and now we have our chart. Now let's close the ribbon, make this guy a little bigger. Let's say like this. Go to the View tab. So select somewhere in the worksheet, then go to the View tab and uncheck Grid Lines. And if you wanted, you could also uncheck Headings and uncheck Formula Bar. But it doesn't look bad like this, so we'll keep it with our headings. Now, a neat little trick here is I want this chart title to update with whatever I type here. So we can click this chart, go to Format, over here on the left, Current Selection, select Chart Title, go here and type an equal sign and select the cell that you want that to equal. So now, when I'm over here, I type in the Google ticker, Google automatically pops up. That's so cool. And if you want it to be uppercase, what we could do, we can't actually use the formula here, you'll notice. Format, chart title, good, good. If I type upper, doesn't really want to work. But, little tip, there's probably a better way to do this, but this way doesn't hurt. Now we go here. We can change it from E4 to F4. And what we can do is make this guy blend in with the background color. So now you don't even know he's there. And at the very end, if you lock all the cells except for the ones you can edit, no user could ever edit or select this or even know there's anything here. So that's a cool little way to get a nice chart title. So there are a lot of things going on there, but we're not done yet. Let's make it so we have some cool drop-down menus. This is data validation, really awesome. All you do is select the cell where you want it to be and hit Alt-DL. Then on the Settings tab, in any value in the drop-down here, we go to List, and we simply type what we want. So for the source here, what I want to do is I want you to be able to select if it's an open price, a high price, a low price, closing, or adjusting close price. So I'm going to type just that text right here. And the way that it's going to work later on when it's automated is what you put here should be the exact same name as the headers, as the titles for the columns on your data tab. So this down here in the chart comes straight from the titles of the columns in your data tab. So we just want to copy those. If that was a little confusing, this is what I'm talking about. This is where it is. That's where the chart gets the names. Just make sure you spell it in the exact same way. Order doesn't have to be the same though. So select the cell, Alt-D-L, list, type them in, open, comma, so there's no equal sign, no quotation marks, nothing. Open, comma, high, comma, low, comma, close, comma, adjusted close. And let's do one more option for everything. Let's call that all. Hit OK. Nice drop-down menu. Now let's go to the date. We're going to do the same thing, Alt-D-L, list. Now what do I want you to be able to choose here? Well, it's up to you, but in this case, I want someone to be able to choose a date range, so when it starts and when it ends. So let's type range, comma. I want you to be able to choose a specific month. Let's say you want to compare January for every year that you have. So let's type month. Or you want to view an entire year. So year. What if you want to view a specific month of a specific year? So I'm just going to type month year. Now I also want to add one more option, max, to show all of the data that we have on the chart. So max, hit OK. Now we got those nice and neat. If you wanted, you could also put some data validation here. So Alt-D-L. For the month, I'm only going to allow you to input numbers. And this is actually why I made the helper column over here. Everyone's going to be able to understand numbers 1 through 12. And I have that nice helper column over here that has all the numbers 1 through 12. So that's going to help us later when we use the macro to automate everything. So what we could do, we do not want any value. We want a whole number that is between a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 12. So now if I put 13, error, 12, no problem, and 0, error, 1, okay. Year, we could do the same thing, Alt-D-L, whole number between, let's say, just keep it easy. And we want our spreadsheet to work way into the future, so year 3000. But whatever you want there, doesn't matter. For these, we could do date validation. Start date 1/1/1900. End date 1/1/3000. The only important thing is that you have dates being entered and that you remember the format. That's not going to work because I have a US date format. So let's retry it now. Let's remove that one there and put the 13 here. So pay attention to the date format that you have. It's very, very important. The next thing, which I almost forgot, there's so many formatting things that you can do. You want to make sure that this guy over here is not going to move around when you're moving around the cells. This is especially important if you decide to put extra data on this worksheet. So we can click it, right click it, format chart area. I really hate this new thing in Excel 2000 whatever. Go to the properties, size and properties. In earlier versions of Excel, this is going to pop up in a little window right here. You just go to the size and properties tab, and then we're going to go to properties, I believe. Don't move or size with cells. That's going to make sure that it stays exactly the same no matter what we do in the worksheet. That's it for part 1 of this tutorial. In part 2, I'm going to show you how to make the macro code that's behind all of this that's going to allow you to choose the different stocks and dates and make the chart dynamic and awesome. But wait for your homework assignment. Before next week, I want you to figure out how you could make this better, how you could make the layout better or more usable. So maybe the formatting could be a little bit better, or you want to make it so someone can't mess things up. How would you do that? Just to give you a couple of ideas there. And then post your results to the forum on TeachExcel.com and put the word homework in the title as the very first word so I can see what you're doing there. And if you have any questions, you can as well ask them there so that we can work on making this spreadsheet as good as possible. But for now, I think I've given you a pretty good start on how to make a pretty decent looking spreadsheet with a dynamic chart. I hope you liked the tutorial. If it was helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe and accept notifications so you can see all the new tutorials.